Hey there, this is Seth Warris from Channel 9 coming to you from the beautiful Building 43 where a lot of Azure stuff happens. I'm here with a special guest to talk about Azure. Tell us who you are and what you do, buddy.
So my name's John Chemnitz. I'm a program manager on the Azure Monitor team. It's a brand new service that we've announced at Ignite, a platform service for working with all of your logs and metrics. And so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that.
Let's do that. So the first question I have, and obviously you have some good stuff that you're going to show us, is when we talk about logs, is logs just restricted to like a particular service, or are we talking about logs for all of Azure?
Yeah, so actually, let's go directly to talk a little bit about that, right?
Cool.
So when we look at what kind of Azure Monitor's big data types are, we look at that and we say, number one is metrics, right? And those come from resources that are on the Azure platform. But also logs that come from resources. We call those diagnostic logs. And then we also have the activity log. Now, the activity log is a little different. The activity log describes anything that's happening to your resources by someone who is working with the Azure platform. So it's kind of an audit trail for everything that's happening in your resources to say, hey, who stopped that VM? Who deployed that new service? All of that is tracked in the activity log.
So when I'm looking at this, and you're looking at platform, these are sort of things that happen within a resource?
So everything that's a diagnostic log is going to happen within a resource. The diagnostic logs are things like, your IIS logs for a web service. It might be, if you have a logic app, they have a concept of like a workflow runtime log. These sort of things, it's very resource specific, and diagnostic logs uses kind of a general schema that everyone kind of uses as a baseline, and then they're able to include all of their own properties for the specific types of logs that they're dealing with within that particular resource.
I see. And the way you're talking about it, you're talking about it in a resource agnostic way, which means that this is going to help with everything you do on Azure.
Exactly.
Like
so the great promise of Azure Monitor is that as we onboard all of our resource types, you're going to be able to deal with any resource log, regardless of the resource type, in a consistent way, so that you can do common things with that. And that's actually kind of, we won't talk much about metrics today. We're going to focus on the log aspects. But I want to call out that with these logs, we offer a whole bunch of options in terms of being able to query them, archive them, route them, both the third-party services as well as some of our more advanced first-party offerings. And then, great ways within the Azure platform to manage these. We have a whole set of options in terms of, REST APIs, the ability to use resource manager templates. It's all very easy and has a consistent portal experience as well.
And that's amazing in the sense that you can effectively, once all of the resource types are onboarded, you can have sort of this command center of knowing everything that's happening holistically across your whole cloud.
It's really bringing together that single pane of glass for monitoring data, and particularly with the Azure portal, as we'll see.
Fantastic. Well, let's dive into it.
Sure, yeah. So first thing we're going to talk about is the activity log, which, as I mentioned before, is control plane operations within Azure, right? So there's a whole bunch of things we can do with that right out of the box. So first of all, in the portal, there's an experience for querying that and looking historically based on some set of inputs. You can also query that with the PowerShell, REST API, or our cross-platform CLI. All have options to query that up to 90 days in the past. If you want more than 90 days of retention on that, you can store it within a storage account, and that's great for if you need to audit your activity log long into the future. It also works great for something like static analysis.
Or machine learning eventually if you want to learn about resource allocation.
Exactly, right. And so, that we enabled you to have any amount of days of retention on that, or you can set a retention policy of quote unquote 0 days and we'll retain it forever. So you have a great amount of flexibility for how long we store events in your storage account. And then the next option is streaming to an event hub. This is something that is we think of kind of two really big scenarios here. One is if you're doing any sort of custom telemetry system, or your organization has built their own telemetry system, this is how you're going to be able to set up a listener and just stream those logs in near real time into your telemetry system. And then, of course, the other big use case here is all of our third-party partners.
Right.
So you can think of all these companies that deal with log integration. They deal with more advanced log analytics, operational insights. They're going to be using this mechanism of streaming to an event hub and then listening to that event hub to pull all of those activity log events into their systems.
That's awesome, because with Event Hub, you can set up alert on a hot path and say, hey, our resource utilization is super high right now.
Yeah.
Something is either really wrong or really good, and we need
Exactly.
to make sure that we allocate provision.
Yeah, and there's really, streaming to the Event Hub is a great way too of doing custom things where you can set up a stream analytics query and then immediately pump data into Power BI. It's all a visual experience to set it up, and
Right.
within an hour, you can have your own custom Power BI dashboard. And that's actually an interesting example, because for activity logs, we have an out-of-box Power BI content pack. So another way to view your activity log is in Power BI, you can add the Azure, right now it's called the audit log activity pack. It will be called the activity log pack. And that will immediately give you some broad insights as to what's going on in the activity log in a visual way.
And that's awesome, because in the activity log, I'm thinking particularly if you're building a website, you can send even informational things to the log that are very important, and you can monitor those live with a live graphic in Power BI.
Exactly, and certainly things like if you think about security, making sure that you have a compliant infrastructure. These are the sort of things that you're going to get a better sense of by looking into the activity log. And then something that we have now in private preview, and I'll give you a little demo of this, is we've added the ability to create alerts off of the activity log. And a really neat experience around this, where essentially you can define a notification group that includes email addresses, webhooks, and now SMS as ways to actually notify people of some event. So you may have critical error, someone tried to stop a resource who shouldn't have stopped that. You set up that as your query, and you'll be able to receive that over SMS, email, and then a webhook to one of your third-party systems that needs that data brought into.
And it could be a good thing, like you have a sales goal that you've reached, and now everyone gets the party and they get the message, hey, we reached our sales goal. That's kind of a cool thing too.
Totally. And then the final thing that I'll mention about the activity log is that we have this great ability. We're really deeply integrated with OMS log analytics. So right out of box, log analytics has a solution for the activity log in Azure, and they can do more advanced alerting off of that. Great log search, and so you get a lot more power if you also are using log analytics with this.
Fantastic.
So I think next what we'll go ahead and do is let's actually go to
it feels like we need to look
portal.
at it.
Yeah, definitely. So first thing I'm going to do is pull up the Azure portal, as you know and love. What I'm looking at here is something that you'll hear us talk a lot about on Azure Monitor, which is dashboarding, and using dashboards in Azure to really see your monitoring data end to end. So you can see here, I've got everything from metrics on a web app to data that's related to my SQL server for that web app, a little bit of application insights data, and then, as you'll see here, we can even add in a query from the activity log that, based on the definition, will let me know how many events are showing up within the time period.
So before we go on, is this the same dashboard where we add tiles to when you first load Azure up, or is this a different thing?
This is the exact same thing,
right?
So
when you log in,
and so it's right there. One great thing about this, you can share it between your team. As you can see, my team already has a few dashboards that we share.
Cool.
So we can just switch through those and see the right set of data depending on, if you're running multiple services within the same subscription, this is a way to be able to view all that in one place. A dashboard can also incorporate tiles that get data from multiple subscriptions. So it's a way to bring together data across subscriptions.
And this is nice because usually it's just the default one for me. It's cool to see that you can add sort of a log or the monitoring stuff into the actual
Exactly.
dashboard.
And we've made it really easy to populate this dashboard. And that's what I really want to talk about today is, now if I go over to more services here on the left-hand side, now you'll see a new item in the list, which is called monitoring. If I click on that item, this is going to be my home for monitoring data in Azure. And so the first thing we'll look at is this new activity log experience. Right here you can see I can set up a query, I can define which subscription I want to look at, I can choose a resource group within there, look at all resources within there, maybe the last hour is worth of data I'm interested in, and then I can look at things like event severity. Hey, I only want critical errors or something like that. Once I apply this, it'll return all the operations. You can see that like, oh, a alert rule was activated 9 minutes ago and someone updated an alert rule 4 minutes ago. And so because I narrowed it down to that resource group in the subscription, I've got that query, I can then save that and then it's shared across my team. So I can go through and look at any of the queries that are shared across my team, and I can pin it to the dashboard. So if I have a saved query here, let's say, let me know if there's any warning level activity in my activity log. I can hit the pin button, and now when I go back to my dashboard, what you'll see is we've added in that tile here, and it'll load up with the number of events that match the query for the time period. Another great way to incorporate that into your dashboard, to always have that knowledge in a single view.
Got it.
That's kind of a quick look at the activity log experience. Again, like going directly into to log analytics is something that gives you more power on top of that. I'll mention here the export option, which is what I mentioned in terms of being able to go to a storage account or export to an event hub. And really easy to just pick a storage account and you're ready to go. We'll immediately start streaming those events. The final thing I'll mention was the private preview alerting feature that I hinted at. So in this view, I'm going to look at a private preview version of the portal. So you'll only see this if you join our private preview. And if you do, you'll see now a few new things. So let's say write dashboards is an event that I want to be alerted on when something has. I'm going to click here for add notification rule. And a notification rule can be based off of activity log events. It can also be based off of service health events. And so that means like if there's an outage, if there's maintenance that's going to be occurring, you could create something off of that as well.
So these events, obviously there's health events, but those other events, were they defined by the user? These events that were in here?
These are events that every resource is going to provide, and it's actually just provided by Azure. Anything that's considered a write operation by an API will show up in this list.
I see,
so
and
for
that would
example,
be resource dependent, right?
Exactly. And so for example here, even because a dashboard is technically a resource type in Azure, I'm seeing write dashboards as an action that happened. And it tells me, oh look, I'm the one who did that action. I'm the one who wrote to the dashboard.
And this is really interesting because let's just say you're trying to manage costs, and we're all about telling you what's going on in Azure. There could be a situation where anytime anyone creates a resource, you could set an alert and say, oh no, Jim's created like 7 already. Maybe he's testing something and not watching his spend.
Exactly.
Let's have a talk with Jim.
Yeah, and certainly, a lot of people are interested in the ability to be notified, hey, a VM was stopped. Because you really want to make sure that your service is reliable and up and running. Any service that has been stopped, you might want to have awareness about that. And that's what this gives you, right? Again, you're going to define your query here and give your rule a name. This is the interesting part here, where now in your receivers list, you'll be able to enter a name of a person and then notify via SMS, email, or webhook, and you can add any number of these into the list. We then save that as a notification group. So you can see here I have a few existing groups. This is one of my test groups, and it's going to notify all the webhook email addresses and phone numbers that I've entered into that notification.
And that's awesome because, I mean, when you say SMS and email, that's great, but with webhook, you can do pretty much anything.
Exactly.
Right? You could even generate a commit to Git, or add an issue to Git, or add an issue to your own tracking system, or do whatever you want, really.
And I mean, a lot of people are using our webhooks directly integrated with Logic App as a great example, where the webhook triggers a Logic app, which then can open up a world of different scenarios on top of what we offer with the webhook. So you can think, post a Slack, you can create a Word document, you can do all sorts of additional things, create a GitHub issue. These are all advanced features that come out of being able to directly use that webhook in a Logic app as an example.
That's amazing. So we've gone through a lot of things. We talked about sort of the new way we're doing diagnostics. There's a window to do that with. There's a way to query by subscription, by resources in a subscription.
Yes.
And then there's a way to sort of pin those to dashboards and send notifications. It feels like there's a lot more to it. Where can we go to find out more?
If you want to learn more, I would encourage you to go over to our documentation page. And the way that you can get to that is head to azure.com, and we are a direct link under documentation. Monitoring and management will be this monitoring and diagnostics section. Fantastic. And in that documentation section, it's new, and it's kind of fleshes out all of the different types of data that we deal with in Azure Monitor, and gives a lot more information on how you can use ARM templates to do this stuff. Do it through PowerShell, do it through CLI, use a REST API. All those more advanced scenarios will be covered in the documentation.
Fantastic. Well, there's no excuse to not know what's going on ever in all of your Azure resources. Thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks so much for watching. My name is Seth Juarez. This is Channel 9. We'll see you next time. Take care.